Good afternoon. My name's Eric Weiner from Windsor. I'm here to talk about SB 4, 5, and the Governor's Bill 86 in regards to the AI components and the automatic license plate readers. Um, Out of college, I grew up in Windsor. Out of college, I was recruited in 1985 by one of the first AI commercial companies called IntelliCorp, and have been in that business since then. Um, Last spring, I initiated in Windsor a search and then continued to lead the effort to understand how the use of the flock safety system was being used in town. That led to the town council voting 8-1 to turn the system off a few weeks ago. I have not yet submitted written comments. I wanted to see the types of things you might be interested in before I send you this much data. But sitting through this discussion, I realized there's really three maxims in the industry that applies to overall to what you're doing. The first is what is recognized as AI today in 3 to 5 years is just normal computing. Second is be very careful when you're being sold a technology product, or I guess in this case, lobbied by somebody who's wearing a necktie. Um, and then the third is Silicon Valley operates generally on a move fast and break things model. When underlying civil liberties and constitutional rights are affected, that model is broken. If you're going to threaten somebody's civil liberties, whether it's surveillance or what have you, you need to think about a little bit more about what the medical industry might be doing, where they're not starting on saying, how fast can we get the product out? You're putting safety first. Without hesitation, I will assert that flock safety has not done that, despite their claims to the opposite. I've gone through, for instance, a whole bunch of the flock safety contracts and the loopholes that are beneficial to the company and detrimental to the municipalities that are signing up are extraordinary. And I've been on both sides of these contract negotiations throughout my career. And I shared some of this with one of the attorneys I had hired. And he said, if I brought that to him, he would laugh me out of his office. It was so lopsided. And I will provide you with some of that right up as we go on. The move fast and break things, and back to the contract and the bill. SB 4, for instance, has a provision that would put out of FOIA reach data that's collected by an ALPR system. That would have prevented me from discovering what I did in Windsor back last summer. So that's a provision that must come out. And then overall, the municipalities across any technology, the industry is moving so much faster than the towns are able to cope with. They need help understanding the technology and particularly the provisions in contracting. A local town attorney is not going to be able to understand one of these software contracts. And I think perhaps that's where your general law committee might think about extending some of your expertise and legislative abilities. With respect to ALPR data, the Judiciary Committee is going to be looking at an ALPR bill, is my understanding. I hope there can be some reconciliation between what you're doing, what they're doing, and what came through post. And then finally, when I look at these technologies that can be very intrusive, step back and say, if you could explain this to the drafters of the Constitution, what would they think? Would they agree that it's okay to do nationwide surveillance? I think not.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you some questions,
Sure.
right, based on, you talk about the loopholes.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about those loopholes in the contract? Like, for instance, does it allow for selling of data?
So selling is a mixed word. Um, you could argue they're selling the data because their overall service is making Windsor's data available to other municipalities. If they did not have the ability to make a locality's data available to elsewhere, they would have no product the way it's architected. So I don't think it's out of the realm of argument to say they are selling data.
It's a good argument, right? The way we define sale of data and our consumer data privacy laws is monetary or other valuable
Correct.
consideration. So that's another valuable consideration, right?
Mhm.
It's a value to people. But are there ways, like if the data is de-identified or other things that it allows for actual, not, they're both sale, right? Valuable
Yeah.
consideration, but what other people may more likely consider sale.
Yeah, the de-identification is tricky. Flock gets to define how they do it. With today's technology, it's very easy to go backwards and re-identify, depending on how you do the de-identification. They claim that the municipality owns the data. Well, not really when you dig into the contract, when they grant themselves some perpetual use licenses to the data. They get to aggregate the data. They get to use it for training their systems. They get to use it, which, by the way, I believe a lot of that training is done outside of the country, which is just outside of our regulatory reach. Um, the um, so the range of issues, if you think of one area in the contract that just struck out, is if Flock were to be acquired tomorrow, say by Palantir, which may be a company you're familiar with, um, everything Windsor has done would be now under the auspices of Palantir. There would not be a contractual right for a customer to say, no, I don't want to do that. So what does ownership really mean in that case?
And an excellent point, we do allow for when a sale or proposed for some sharing of data in that
Mhm.
that instance. Um, Back to like what would the framers of the Constitution think
Yeah.
about creating a system of mass surveillance?
Mhm.
Can you tell a little, like I'm not sure if it was Windsor that I had heard based on your research that they have been queried, I believe it was like 90,000 times by Houston, 100,000 times by Florida.
Yeah.
What can you explain exactly what that means when
Yeah.
it's queried? Is it they're trying to match one license plate from there that they're looking for and they just say, where is it across the
Mhm.
country? Or are they instead going and getting a list of all of the license plates that have been seen so then they can compare it?
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll take you through that. So I did my initial FOIA request was for data from April 1st through June 9th of last year. There were about 590,000 searches of Windsor's data in that time period. 150,000 were from Texas, of which about 100,000 were just from Houston. And those were searches at discrete times for particular license plates. Um, how they were doing such a volume, I don't know. The media has certainly reported on cases where right now all it takes to do a search in Flock is a username and password, where local officers were sharing their username and passwords with federal law enforcement, whether it's ICE or Border Patrol or so on. So even what you see in an audit log is not necessarily a reflection of the truth. Um, one example of the searches that just jumped out in Texas was July 4th last year in Lubbock, Texas. The search reason was something like protest vehicle. And it was on July 4th. Um, there was nothing in the press about any major protest breaking out or any crimes happening. It really looked to me like the local police department was going and grabbing all the license plates that were in the parking lot of people attending a particular demonstration and then doing a nationwide search to see where those people had been. All this is without a warrant. If a police department wanted evidence from Google to get the information off of your phone and where it's been, it would require a warrant, a judicial warrant. Even that is being broken down now. In the last few weeks, ICE and Border Patrol have been seeking administrative warrants that companies like Google have responded to. It's with no judicial review. We must be the bulwark against those destruction of our First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights.
So you mentioned one of the reasons you saw when you did your FOI, your FOIA request, was a protest vehicle.
Yeah.
What are some of the other reasons that people, were they always things that would seem
yeah.
like a valid criminal reason?
Yeah, I would say out of that 590,000 searches in that area, it's got to been well over 95%, maybe even more than 99% seemed like they were legitimate law enforcement searches. But many of them were just, they would write a dash or a number, or you would see ASDF in the searches, the first four letters in the second row of the keyboard. The FBI out of a fusion center in Houston a few weeks ago came out with a statement saying, encouraging people that do a search of Flock to just write in as their reason for the search to be investigation. And the rationale was that people like me were doing FOIA requests and they were losing control of how they were searching. So let's just obscure it from the general public so that they can continue doing what they want. Even with the drop downs now that Flock talks about, it still doesn't get around the basic problem that my data in Windsor and driving here into Hartford lives on a server that they control, that Windsor does not have a guarantee that they can withdraw or delete the data. If they did, Windsor would hold the encryption keys to that software. That's not how the system is architected.
Thank you. So I guess then the controls of limiting searches by purpose, what do you feel?
I think it's a sort of a false flag. The main issue is that the data lives on a central server in the AWS, in the Amazon cloud, that is controlled by Flock. The statement that the locality has ownership is meaningless in that environment. You would have to go through a very heavy series of outside audits and attestations to deletion. My list is this long of what you would want to see in a properly architected and contracted system to let that kind of a statement actually be real in fact.
And I guess I have one last question
Sure.
for you. Through your FOIA request, what information do you actually get? Are you able to FOIA request a certain camera and get a list of every license plate that is driven by that camera?
I haven't tried to do that yet, and I don't know the answer to that question. All I asked was for what the Flock calls the network audit, which is the list of searches that were done. Back out in Washington State, I could do they just said that everything is a public record. So, Senator, I could go get your license plate and ask for all of your travels throughout Washington State, and that would be in public record. I don't think you really want that to happen. It's unclear how that would play out here in Connecticut.
So I guess, which brings up another question for me. And so obviously your access to the audits was valuable information, but is access to the plate, if you, and again, we need to verify, we don't know if you can get them, but would you be opposed to limiting the ability of someone to FOI a list of every license plate that is driven by a specific license plate reader?
Yes, because you could go and then assemble that same request from lots of license plate reader and then figure out where I've been over time. And I don't think that's what the founders would have thought was a good idea.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think because with that amount of data, right, and with AI, it just makes it so easy. You could upload it, say identify trends, look for this person,
yeah.
build a profile for me. There are other things you
Mhm.
could quickly do. So I think that agreed. Like when we create public records, open records are important, but people's privacy are important. So I think we need to find that
Mhm.
balance. I think we're in agreement, right, that those audit records, yes, they should be public, but the individual license plates, you shouldn't be able to FOI and get that information.
But you should be able to do it for yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. You so you think that you should be able to pull and see every time. Okay, this is very interesting. I don't.
Yeah,
We're only halfway through
I know,
today,
I
or
know.
6 hours in,
I
and I could probably ask you questions for a long time. So I'm going to respect everyone else's time
okay,
and say I will be in touch with you.
please, I'm happy to help.
So
And just one other piece on the AI side is I believe I can help a bunch on that. Um, Between SB 4, 5, and 86, you have three different definitions of artificial intelligence. The definition in 86, to me, is probably the closest. I could take the definition in SB 4 and say that the Coke vending machine out in the lobby is an artificial intelligence. So there needs to be a lot of work on what that definition aspect is.
yeah, and agree. And one thing I'll just say that is hard to understand when you don't read this legislation all the time is that we try to look for uniformity across states, and the OECD definition is the one that
Okay.
people are trying to adopt, but it doesn't necessarily always. If you're a technologist, people don't necessarily like that
Yeah,
definition, but just in looking for uniformity. But happy to work with you
great.
on that. But whatever definition we pick, agreed it should be consistent across bills.
Yes.
So that is an excellent point.
All right.
So
And I'm at your service.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
actually,
Yep.
Representative Ackert has a question.
Yes, thank you. Just what did Windsor use the program for specifically? Just
This was looking for vehicles that were on a hot list,
okay.
like they were stolen
Yeah.
or somebody fleeing a scene of an accident.
Okay.
And they helped. They helped solve crime.
Okay.
There was no question about that.
Yeah. I appreciate that because
Sure thing.
I have 5 towns I serve and many of them are asking for more. They want to do license readers and I think they did. Buyer beware is what
Yeah.
we need to be stressing on that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question. Understood. There is a definite public safety benefit. And so our goal here is to balance the personal right to privacy with the public, the greater good
Yeah.
of the public and public safety. And how do we put guardrails, not prohibitions?
And the
So-
buyer beware applies to so many different software products now. The vendors are so far ahead of the municipalities that's easy for them to get hoodwinked.
Yeah.
I used to do the hoodwinking.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Reformed Hoodwinker. Thank you. All right. Next,